Hey, what's going on, everybody? Gareth here with another video. Today, we're putting in the M50 manifold back into the E36. I've done some plumbing. I've done some wiring. Kind of getting close. Of course, this is the most nervous thing to be doing. Pretty confident with connections. But, you know, there's always that, like, did I plug this into the wrong way? And the way that BMW does a lot of these connectors is, you know, they're all kind of the same, but you kind of have to feel your way through it a little bit. But I did do the video showing the M50 manifold conversion with the M50manifold.com conversion kit. I wanted to point out a couple things. I actually did make some modifications here. I added riv nuts to these adapter brackets, which, you know, you can see right there. That's to use the intake manifold mounting brackets. What I like about doing that as opposed to using the hardware included is, you know, it just basically threads into the adapter versus having to take, you know, these bolts and stick them through and hope it works. So that was my little modification in the kit. I've also located the intake air temperature sensor into the Mishimoto intake boot here. Had to modify the idle air control valve hose, again, to make it fit, but not a huge deal. I mean, everything else kind of came together pretty nicely on this, so I don't have any complaints. I mean, really, now it's just a matter of getting this thing in. So we'll see how that goes. You know, I do apologize that I didn't really talk too much about, you know, reinstalling the engine harness or doing any of these hoses and stuff, but to be honest with you, I mean, there's really not that much to talk about. It's just a matter of putting the harness back in, laying things out, tracing your steps back. You know, a lot of this is common sense. You just want to put stuff back in the way that it came apart. And, you know, if you're ever in doubt, there's plenty of resources out there that can help guide you through the process, so you'll never really be lost on this. But anyway, enough talking. Really want to get this manifold in and start plugging stuff in, so let's do it. And yeah, that went pretty smoothly. Call that a win. Alright, so there is no way I would even be able to film this with the camera anywhere near here, so I'm just going to bring the camera into the heart of the action. I mean, the manifold is in. So right there ahead we have the oil separator. Right there, those are the riv nuts I added to the adapter brackets. So basically, you could see this piece right here. This is part of the M50manifold.com installation kit, and this is the M52 bracket, so it adapts it. There it is. You can see that nut straight down there just to the right of the wire. That's the nut that holds the bracket in place, and I have that duplicated in the rear. You're not going to be able to see that, but basically this has two of those brackets holding it in place. This right here is our idle control valve hose. Look right through here, and you can see how the adapter kit works. You can see the fuel hoses in the rear, but everything just sort of went into place like it normally would. So no major problems there. Next, we'll go ahead and torque the intake manifold back to the cylinder head, which will get it officially installed. Alright, now we got to install the intake manifold nuts, which are kind of in a precarious, awkward position. So, key here is to get them started somehow, some way. A little unconventional, but this works. Yeah, this is like the most badass ratcheting screwdriver ever. All the extension it comes with, comes with the bits, whatever. But this floppy extension, this essentially, I've used it for hose clamps, all sorts of other stuff. This is a must-have in my book. Definitely buy this. Out of all the gear wrench tools, this is one of them to definitely have. $15 on this. Gonna check the torque on this multiple times because the intake manifold gaskets are a little spongy, so this one in the back's a nightmare. Try this again. Yeah, we're going to call those good, I think. Yeah, we're there. Now you take the fuel injector harness and just going to go ahead and clip it into place. all the locking tabs will pretty much just settle where they need to be. There we go. The nice thing here is I'm running out of connectors to plug in, at least on this side of the engine. So it's a good sign. So I did some wiring cleanup on everything. It's obviously the following day. I had to quit filming from the night before because it was pretty much going to downpour excessively. But all the major connectors have been routed to where they need to be. I had a couple of things that were plugged in incorrectly over here, but going ahead and sorted it out. This connector will not be used. That is for the secondary air vacuum control solenoid, which is deleted from the car. I have the throttle position sensor plugged back in. I have the evap solenoid plugged back in with the correct plug. So everything worked out the way that it was supposed to. Also, it looks like I'm going to have just the right amount of length in the intake air temperature sensor to plug that in, which I have installed in this boot here. So it just needs to make it to this corner, which it should be able to. So we're good on that. I have the power steering pump, or the servicing belt off. I was just cycling the power steering pump to pull some fluid in, kind of pre-bleeding it, but just going to be working on plugging in some of the other wires over here and get all that sorted, and then just really be a matter of getting the battery in and test firing the car, making sure that it runs. Everything on the intake side is hooked back up. All the connectors reach. The only connector that is currently not plugged in is this one right there, which would be for the secondary air vacuum control valve, which secondary air is not going back in the car, so that's going to stay unplugged. But you know, everything went back together pretty neatly. I was able to retain you know, all the OEM bracketry. You know, the routing is slightly different in a couple places, but I mean, it's not terribly unexpected. The only thing that I'm going to have to do that I didn't really count on is the accelerator pedal. There's like a bushing that sits on a bracket. That bushing broke when I put it back on, so I'm going to have to come up with a solution, but I think I know what I'm going to do for that. You know, there's going to be a couple connectors, like, you know, this right here, which is the cruise control. That's not going to be hooked up. Electrical connectors for the ASC throttle body actuator, those are going to be left alone. So I just need to tape those up and zip tie them. I mean, technically the correct thing to do would have been to remove it from the harness, but I'll do that at a later date, I think. Not really at the point where thinning the harness seems to be the good thing to do. But anyway, everything on the intake side of the engine is done. Now I got to deal with everything on the right hand side of the engine bay, including putting the ECU back in. And then let's cross your fingers and hope it runs. Hope it does. It's be a lot of work to get to this point to have something stupid not work. So I'm feeling pretty decent about it. So let's go ahead and get everything hooked up. just want to make sure those pins are lined up before you close the locking tab. Plus, the locking tab won't go into place if the pins are out of alignment anyway. So if you got to force it, don't do it. This is our ECU cover. We're gonna put this seal into place. That, in theory, keeps dust and stuff out of the ECU box, but it kind of doesn't. Alright, so this right here looks to be our secondary air pump connector, which would normally be here. Secondary air pump is not going back in, so here's a bunch of positive cables we're going to have to plug back in. This right here is your basically a power terminal. But what we can immediately do right off the bat is lock our diagnostic connector back into position. It just sits right there. This is our ignition coil harness, ignition coil wiring harness connector. It sits in that housing right there. There we go. We got a couple of grounds. There we go down here. Again, I know you're not going to be able to see most of this. Just can't really get a good angle on most of this, so we'll end up zip tying this out of the way. And then on our power side, these can only really go in one position, so this is our main power. This goes to like the starter and the alternator and all of that. Got another terminal right here. Then we have one last terminal, which goes right here. So technically at this point, everything's installed. I only have to do the engine ground down here, just have to bolt it back up. But other than that, everything is in. Not sure if I'm going to throw this back in or not yet. It's kind of crumbled, so probably not. Wiring harness is in, everything's hooked back up. I have oil in the engine, I have fluid in the transmission, well, oil in the transmission too. Battery in the trunk. Pretty much I'm ready to crank this thing over, but before I do that, I'm going to pull the fuel pump relay. Reason for doing that is I want to crank the engine over a couple times just to help build oil pressure and pump oil up to the top of the engine, which is going to be dry. And then I'll put the fuel pump relay back in, you know, basically prime the fuel pump a bunch of times to get fuel pressure back in the rail, and then we're going to crank it, and hopefully it works. Just some oil burning off the headers and the block. I don't see any leaks. I'm gonna close the door because that chiming's annoying as shit. But yeah, I mean, it fired up. It runs. The lifters are noisy as hell, but that's because they're bone dry. I mean, it started, and that's pretty much all that you can hope for. I know I don't seem that excited, but honestly, after all the work that went into this to get it to this point, I feel more wiped than anything else. Of course, when you start up an engine for the first time, you're always kind of wondering, shit, was this loose? Did I forget this? You know, there's all that stuff in the back of your mind, especially when the engine sits around for a long time. Yeah, fired up, it runs. It seems to be running pretty smoothly, so good luck and hope for. I do not like that starter motor. That starter motor, the terminal's kind of loose on it, which does not seem normal to me, so I'm going to have to probably address that. But other than that, it started and it ran, and that's awesome. Still have a lot of work left. I mean, we're not there yet. I still got to do the brakes too, which we're going to be doing pretty much next. Probably the next video coming out, because I'm doing a whole thing on performance brakes and things you can do to take, you know, your stock calipers and improve them and make them a little bit more suited for track use. But yeah, kind of rambling on right now. I need to kind of soak this in, but other than that, appreciate all the support, guys. You know, the channel's been growing. I see the subscribers coming in, so for all of you that have subscribed, thank you so much. Really do appreciate it. I'm looking to grow this channel and you know, sort of bring everything that I've learned over the last, you know, 10 years and some of the stuff that I've learned within professional motorsport, bring it over into, you know, kind of this stuff here. But as always, any questions, comments, or concerns, you can leave in the comment box below. Do my best to get back to you as soon as I can. Obviously, rate and subscribe. Always like seeing new subscribers come through. Trying to think when I get to 100 subscribers. I know that seems kind of silly. I do have another channel that has over 10,000, but I let that channel die off, so slowly building this one back up, and this will be the permanent channel moving forward. With that said, you know, I'm thinking, you know, once we get to 100 subscribers, might do some kind of giveaway or something. We'll see. I don't know yet. But as always, like I said, subscribe. Plenty more videos coming out. Do my best to upload videos weekly. But as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys for the next one. Later.